My name's Sarah Kurz, and I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs for Rose Community Foundation. We're really excited to have our guest panelists with us today who've been working really tirelessly on this issue, even just in the last 24 hours. And we're grateful for all of them for joining us today. Those of you on the call with us this morning all contributed directly to the Newcomers Fund, and we're so thankful for your generosity. For those of you who may be new to Rose Community Foundation, likely because you gave through Kyle Clark's Word of Thanks campaign, we as a foundation strive to advance inclusive, engaged, and equitable Greater Denver communities through values-driven philanthropy. We're proud of our long-standing support of and partnership with local immigrant and refugee-serving organizations, including those represented by today's panelists. Our commitment to supporting efforts to build an inclusive and welcoming community for all newcomers is rooted in our organizational history and values. And it is this desire to support a thriving and diverse region that inspired us to host and contribute to the Newcomers Fund. We have certainly not done it alone. We are grateful for our partners in this work. Katie, if you could go to the next slide. We have a steering committee with representatives from the Denver Foundation, which is led by Janet Lopez in this work, Latino Community Foundation of Colorado with Sonia Ulibarri, who you'll hear from on the call, Mile High United Way and Christine Bonero, and then the Office of Mayor Michael B. Hancock. We have Evan Dreyer with us today, and Colorado's Office of New Americans with D. Daniel Scrivens. All of us are partnering together to shore up the organizations that are welcoming and providing support to migrant newcomers. In just a few short months, the Newcomers Fund received more than $460,000 in contributions from more than 1,600 compassionate Coloradans, including many of you on the call today. Donors included foundations, donor-advised funds, and individuals from across the community. To date, we've granted out almost every dollar we've received to 15 organizations that have been on the front lines, providing essential services, including emergency shelter, transitional housing, basic needs, including food and clothing, and wraparound services, including translation and interpretation services. If we can go to the next slide, you can see a list of all the organizations we've given grants to from the Newcomers Fund, and 3 of those lead organizations are joining us on this call. We will elevate audience questions from the chat window, so please feel free to add those at any time. We look forward to continued partnership with each of you to ensure that Colorado and Denver continue to be welcoming and inclusive places that enable everyone in our community to have pathways for success. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Evan Dreyer, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Mayor Michael B. Hancock. Thank you, Evan, for your partnership and leadership on this issue. And Evan's going to share his screen.
I'm going to try to share my screen. Thank you, Sarah. Doesn't look like I have control yet.
Okay, we'll see if we can give you control, and if that doesn't work quickly, we can use.
There we go. I now have control.
Great. Thanks, Evan. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Can y'all see that? Okay, thank you. Thanks to all of you for spending a little bit of time with us. Perhaps more importantly, thank you for contributing to the Newcomers Fund. It really has been a tremendous tool to supplement with speed and non-bureaucratic efficiency the work that the government agencies, the city and the state have been trying to do alongside of many of the NGOs and nonprofits. So your work is incredible. Your contributions are incredibly important to the work that's being done. Really appreciate it. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are right now and what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks as well. Since December, we have served and sheltered 8,500 people coming to Denver from the southern border. We have spent about almost $16 million at this point. And Dee will talk a little bit more about the state's spend, but they've spent over $8 million. So we're looking at significant financial burdens that both the city and the state are incurring here. Our reimbursement rate from the federal government is, Mayor Hancock used the word offensive yesterday, and that's what it is. It's abysmal, the amount of support that we're getting from the federal government. The state has been able to provide the city with $3.5 million, and we're grateful for the support and the partnership with the state. Since December, more than 1,000 city employees from 30 different agencies have been deployed and redeployed to work on the influx of migrants from the southern border. Circumstances have changed a lot in the last week. We were seeing about 20 to 30 new arrivals every day throughout March and April. And then on Thursday, we received 200, just a sudden spike. We weren't anticipating this increase until June. And so we were caught a little bit off guard by the early arrival of so many new arrivals. Yesterday, we had over 280 new arrivals. We've got 950 people in 4 shelters that have been operating. We had the shelter population down from a high in early January. We were able to get the population down to as low as 400 in April, and now it's back up to 950. A 5th shelter was opened on Sunday night just because of the backlog of people that we needed to process and get into our system and get bus tickets. So Auraria, the campus, is using St. Cajetan's Church as a shelter. They opened it Sunday night. We were able to use it last night. We'll be able to use it again tonight, but then that's it, because they've got a whole end of week, weekend long festivities planned around graduations for the different schools there. So we're looking for a replacement for that church right now. It is also worth noting that our homeless shelter system, which generally houses about 2,000 people every night, is now at capacity at well and is doing its best to absorb as many migrant new arrivals as possible. But all of our systems are pretty well tapped. I just wanted to show this chart really quickly. The horizontal line here, the bars below it represent a day where the net departures exceeded the net arrivals. And then you can see over here on the right side that end of April, beginning of May, the bars were going up above the horizontal line, just to visualize that we are seeing way more people coming in than we are able to process back out to their desired destination, other cities like Chicago and New York. We have some immediate next steps that we are working on, literally minute by minute. We're trying to enhance our transportation services so that we can increase bus ticket purchases for folks who really don't want to stay here, but are really trying to get to another city. We were able to, just by way of example, we were able to purchase $67 bus tickets on Sunday. We doubled that yesterday, but we really need to double it again and maybe even triple it in order to just keep up with the inflow of folks who are coming here. We currently have a length of stay policy in our shelters of 30 days. We may need to reduce that in order to just improve the throughput of people. And then we are looking for additional short-term shelter space right now to try to accommodate at a minimum the church on the Auraria campus that was opened on Sunday night. So why is all of this happening again? Title 42 expires this Thursday, and Title 42 is the COVID era rule that was connected to all the COVID emergencies and public health declarations that allowed the US government to expel or deny entry into the US, probably for hundreds of thousands of people. With Title 42 set to expire on Thursday, there has been an increased movement of people from South and Central America towards the border and now across the border, which is why we're starting to see this increase arrive early. Denver is a relatively short bus ride and a relatively inexpensive bus ride, all things considered, from El Paso, which are where the vast majority of folks are coming from. And we are purchasing bus tickets for folks to help them get on to their next destination. And that word has been spreading at the border relatively quickly. So people are getting on buses in El Paso, where they're seeing now close to 10,000 people cross every day as they try to disperse folks at the border. We have become a prime destination, even if that destination is just a short-term stop. Thank you again for your support of the Newcomers Fund. We absolutely cannot do this alone. The city can't do it. State can't do it. We need every partner possible to assist us. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you've been able to provide the ability to move with greater speed and greater flexibility than government. I know you've supported once. We are here in part, not just to update you on the current situation, but to ask you again if you would consider supporting the Newcomers Fund once more. That is what I've got for you all this morning. I'm happy to stick around for a little bit and answer some questions as well. But Sarah, I'll kick it back over to you.
Thanks very much, Evan. And anyone should feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll answer those at the end. So add questions as you think of them. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Sonia Overberry, who's our partner from the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. She's going to facilitate this panel of grantee partners who are on the ground doing this work day to day. Sonia, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you again to everyone who has supported this work and this effort. It is greatly appreciated. In times of crisis, we know that the nonprofit community steps up, that they step up in ways that we don't even anticipate. And in this crisis, over these last months, they have done incredible work to really close the gap for folks arriving and the gap for folks staying in our community. These organizations and leaders are community focused and community led. They come from Venezuelan backgrounds, they're Latino and Chicano. They are culturally aligned in the way they approach their work. They have the capacity to incorporate language justice and talk in people's home languages to provide services. And most importantly, they have the trust of an incredibly vulnerable community of people. They have been working tirelessly stretch their organizations, their operations, and their staff as far as they can possibly go. And this work, as we talk about philanthropy, is the true essence of loving humanity. We're going to get to hear from these leaders directly. The data tells one side of the story, but we want to make sure that we incorporate what's happening on the ground and that we can hear from them directly. So we have a panel of 3 organizations, all funded from the Newcomers Fund, including our 2 organizations, Viva Wellness and Papagayo, who have been really doing grassroots work on this issue very closely since the end of 2022. All of their work spans beyond that date. All of these organizations were serving community before this most recent crisis. And so we're so glad to be able to bring them here today. So we will go ahead and start the panel with a question to each of you. So maybe I can call on folks first and then we can go through there. So just share a quick story about the people you're serving. What are their needs and how have you been able to support them in a way that is successful? So let's start. Yoli, would you like to start first?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I just first of all want to say thank you to the newcomers and to the folks that have been donated. I just, from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you for that. Just quickly, my director of Viva Wellness, I grew up in Venezuela. I arrived to Colorado when I was 16 and a half. And we've been serving families and individuals since early December when the city reached out to see if we could help and have not stopped since then. One of the first things that I remember was walking into the shelters and having that human touch. You know, people would come scared, walking for 4 months. And, you know, we would walk to the shelters and communicate. And I think when they heard, we would hear our voice, like, where are you from? And so it was that connection that we just asked, how you doing? And then start realizing, sitting down with them once they felt better about their plans. They had so many questions. It was cold, never seen snow before. And so then, it really helped to understand, for us to learn, the city has given us certain time to be able to have a plan with them, to say, they don't have phones. Their phones that they had was only through Wi-Fi. And so a connection with people where they come from South America or other countries is what's called WhatsApp, an application. We were able to get phones and RTD passes, get them with job training. The children, many children, we realized that as of January 2nd, we were able to start the Viva School, we call it. We got the kids into the schools, into Vive, and then allow the parents to actually go ahead and get their jobs, get the immigration meetings, everything that they needed to do. And as we did that process, since we learned, we realized that that was allowing us to be able to get them to where they eventually were able to sign their leases. And so we had single parents, we have parents, mom and dad and kids and siblings. We had a lot of individual people that we worked with them. And it went all the way through, when we started moving people away in February. And we started understanding that if we have this process, thanks to you, because at that time we have not gotten any large grants, we were able to get them signed leases. And so I know there's more, we want everybody to talk about it, but basically what we did right now, we have served almost over 6,500 people, serving them in various ways to get them to the bus station, to get them to destination, get them filled in. The people that stayed here, we have helped over 835 people, signed 215 leases. And one of the beautiful stories are here is that we've had a couple families where they follow this whole thing, and they got jobs, the kids were in school, we got them enrolled in DPS, they were able to save some money, and they signed their own lease. That was one of the first one. And they made us cry when they walked into their apartments where they signed themselves this lease, when the child was there looking at it, is this my room? It was something that it took time, but it was something that was completely done. The second one was a child she's 15 years old, arrived pregnant, and she delivered, and we have delivered 4 babies. But your funding, that was not part of it, allowed us to put us into a hotel the month before before she delivered, and buy things for babies and be able to help them. So those were beautiful. 2 of the many, many stories that we have achieved that we have seen thanks to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Yoli. Thank you for sharing those stories too. It really helps to capture what's happening. So Maria Elena, what would you like to share about the people you're serving?
Well, first of all, I feel like I'm gonna cry because Yoli and I have been working one-on-one since day one. The first thing that comes to my mind is thank you. My name is Maria Elena, Director of Papagayo. Thanks to you, synergies, efforts, because I even saw many of you working hard this morning to serve the community. So none of this would have been possible without your help. One thing that I would like to share, and it comes from the bottom of my heart, is humanity. Something that we have learned throughout the process is that everybody has their own story, background. And it is until you talk to them that you get to see a different reality. We're talking about families that not only have walked so many miles just to get here to look for another opportunity, but also families that have gone through all sorts of kinds of abuse, horrible situations. And having partners like you allow us to give them a new opportunity. We're talking about childs that got to see things that no human being needs to see. Adults that didn't need to go through things such as kidnapping and extortion, and even sexual abuse. And I know many of the things might seem hard to say, but these are things that people got to experience, and so many stories that we're not aware of. So thanks to your help, we were able to provide that human touch and that connection, allow them to open their hearts and to bring those walls down and to see maybe what's out there. Maybe I can get to try something different. So it is important for us, they have experienced many stories and have helped many in partnerships to let you know that your dollars were able to provide beyond houses, or was able to provide mental health, even diapers, many things. So thank you so much for everything that you guys have done, because we did all this together. There is a parent, a single dad that I always talked about. I remember seeing him extremely underweight. And whenever he got to talk to us, you know, they recognize the accent, where are you from? They open up and, you know, they get to share what they go through. He is a single dad. He has 2 teenagers. And I remember him telling me, yeah, it was rough. It was really difficult. I would never wish anybody to go through something like this, but thank you. And whoever is behind all of this, thank you for the opportunity. This dad now has a job. Both of the kids are receiving mental health and as well going to school. So thanks to you guys, they get to experience a new life. So from the bottom of my heart, all I get to say is thank you for making this possible.
Well, and thank you to you and your teams that are on that ground that provide that human touch. I think one of the things that's so beautiful and also really hard is how you can be grateful in the midst of just so much difficulty, right? And I know that's true, and that's shared in your stories too. So thank you. Ana, what would you like to share from your work at Servicios de la Raza?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name's Ana Visoso. I work with Servicios de la Raza. And for those who may not know, we've been around the Denver community for 51 years, providing services to our Latino Latinx community. I think I share a lot of the same sentiments that have been shared by Maria Elena and Yoli. You know, I think this is a great example of how a donation can go a really long way and help make a difference in someone's life. I think for us, from Servicios perspective, you know, the influx of migrants, yes, it's visible, but this has been an issue that a lot of our organizations have been supporting our migrant communities for many, many years. So it's not something new where we're learning to work with these folks. I think all of our organizations truly have the experience and the cultural responsiveness to work with our communities. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is really the needs for those essential human services. These are folks that often flee their countries, and it took them a very long time to make it to our state or our city. And so they come with nothing. And so although we are, you know, all working together to address their basic needs, in, you know, such as housing, employment, education, clothing, I think it's important to know that we need to take care of all those things before being able to address some of those deeper rooted issues, such as behavioral health. And that's an area that Servicios has definitely focused on. As Maria Elena mentioned, you know, a lot of our folks have experienced traumatic experiences in their home countries, oftentimes, other times as they've, you know, traveled through multiple countries to get here, or even while arriving here. And so I think that it will be a period of acculturation for many of our community members. They're experiencing language barriers. And so I think that our work is not finished here, and that we will, you know, continue to need support in order to meet the needs for community. And just lastly, really quick, I think around a positive or, you know, an impactful story. I think there's a lot and it's impossible to choose one, but where we have been able to see a lot of community engagement has been around our support groups, pro-social activities and community. We know that these community members are wanting to connect with others and really share time together, potentially with families or others, to kind of normalize their situations a little bit. So we've had a ton of community engagement within our behavioral health department.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing that and for providing those examples that are really important to remember those social connections and how important they are, in addition to all of the real basic emergency needs that folks have. So thinking about the funds that you have gotten from the Newcomers Fund. So this question's for Yoli specifically. How did the Newcomers Fund rapid and flexible dollars enable you to work in a way that was different than other funding sources?
Thank you for this question. The newcomers word, it's number one here when we realize when we can't figure out where the money can come and we go newcomers. So I appreciate that. So one of the things at the beginning, the way it was, all of a sudden we have all these children in the morning arriving to Vive for the school. We had about 120 from the shelter and being able to hire and pay for the bus. This bus that would actually go from this DPS bus with insurance, everything would go to the shelters where the families were and would drop them at Vive to begin with. Then as the kids got enrolled in it, we had to have a second shift, which they would come really earlier to go take them to school, to hire health navigators, to be able to get them enrolled, the parents into emergency Medicaid and it's medicine. The cities like to look to me and goes, Yoli, there are certain things we cannot do. And so I think that communication that I always have with the city every day or every week was about, we can't do this, baby formulas and we're hiring the people to extra people to help with the kids, with the navigators, RTD passes at the beginning, and those chips, we call them chips, but they're the SIM cards that you put on the phones. And newcomers, you bought maybe 500 of those to actually put on the phones of the people at the beginning, so they could actually have connection in the streets. They can understand and how to ride the RTD passes, which will also help us buy, so they can actually start going to their jobs or their assistance. And towards the end, I just want to say one thing, the van. We have been asked for the van for 100 times because we spend so much in Uber and transportation, which also the Newcomers Fund has come to us to be able to emergency immediately take people to hospitals, everywhere else. And so when you approve that van, right now, the van is not just being used for kids, it's being used for what's happening right now. To all the people that are coming, we're taking to to Union Station so we can help the city to make sure they don't miss their buses. And I want to tell you yesterday, the whole idea was we have 12 families sitting on the floor, and the kids have been there for a day or two and they're tired and the buses cannot come through. And the word newcomers came in. I said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and get 12 hotel rooms for these children and families, and we're going to pay for the buses to go where they need to go and get them food. And that's an example of what we did yesterday with your funding, and we worked together with the city, and it was an amazing thing. So that's just a little example of how we can use your funds and how they were used yesterday to help over 50 people. And so thank you. Thank you, Yoli,
for that example. Yeah, the importance of transportation from place to place, and how on the ground doing this work, you have to be able to be responsive. Yes. You're not going to know every need that's going to come up, but that you're able to react quickly and have resources to do that, I think is really important. So thank you. So Maria Elena, how does your cultural understanding and relationship building strengths, which I have seen in action, enable you to provide a different level of support to these newcomers?
Well, first of all, I think as a community, we have to understand that in order for us to find solutions, we have to understand the problem, to understand people's mindset. We have been fortunate with our team. Most of them are Venezuelan. And from point A, which is unit station, where they arrive, there is a smiley face, welcome. We know it's been here. It's been hard. We're here to help you. We're here to guide you to the next process. But at the same time, before any of this took place, it takes me back to December, in which, everybody arrived. It was extremely cold. Everything is new to them. So like Yoli, I was born in Venezuela, but I grew up here. So I remember how important Christmas is for our culture, right? And to be able to understand that, where people are coming from, what you went through, and also understanding the culture. How can I make it easy on you? Just because I understand. I might not know what exactly it's like to be in your shoes, but we understand. Then from there, going to the shelters, getting to talk to them, maybe speaking in their same slang so they can communicate. Because we understand also what has been happening in Venezuela and South America over the course of 20 years. People have gone, just think about this. What made people to come over here? What probably could have been going through that make them walk so many miles just to get here. So we had to open up our mind as a teams and see, okay, this is what they're going through. This is how we have to approach them from the point of sympathy, but also as a culture. The fears, the language, because sometimes people might say things in a different country and it might be taken wrong in a different country. So sometimes we just have to open up and say, okay, this is what you're trying to say. So I think not only it has been a friendly face that walks you through the process, but it actually understands you and understands your limited beliefs, and how to get you to the next steps in your life. So assisting you with understanding that similarity, ships, SimScar, what do you mean by this? How important it is to let your loved ones know that you are okay, you made it safely, Also, what it is important, understanding in order for parents to become independent, kids need to be taken care of and they need to be safe. So helping them through the process, putting them into DPS system as well, kind of guiding them through the culture here in the United States. There are so many good people like you here, but there are some others that have been taken advantage of, even here in the United States. So understanding what's new to you, how can we help you? How can we help you to adjust and to navigate those kind of situations until we get to the point in which we can provide houses, and even then, how do you do your Excel energy? Small things like that. It is so important to become aware of what you don't know. How can we help you to become successful and independent from the system so you can be part of the community and help some other people? So our therapists are also Venezuelan. One of our main instructor, which is, we love her because she's so good, she's also Venezuelan. So just identifying that accents allows people to open up and to trust. And once you have people's trust, you can build together. So we have learned that as a team, understanding where they're coming from, understanding the culture, it helps people to succeed because you gain their trust, but as well because they feel understood and they can make the next efforts. So it is important. And thank you once again for making all this possible.
Yeah, well, thank you. And so important to remember that trust piece and how powerful proximity to the issue, right? How powerful lived experiences, even the variances in them, are to frontline work, to leadership, to insights into policy and procedural development. So thank you for reminding us of all of that. So for Anna, can you talk a little bit about the importance of sustained funding over time so that a crisis doesn't overwhelm an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with that question, it's a very, clear answer in the sense that sustainable funding is needed in order for us to continue to do the work, right? We know just based on what continues to happen in our city and with the continued new arrivals, the work is not finished. And although one-time funding is significant and allows us to do the work, all of the organizations that are supporting these communities are stretched very thin, because we are in this situation right now. We're not in this situation a year from now. And so I think that it is really important to put the funds into organizations that are providing those direct services. I know, 3 organizations are here today, but there's many more that are doing the work even without funding. And so I think it is important. I think that every dollar counts, but I also think that we need our city and our state to continue to step up to provide significant funding for this work to be able to be completed. We, as an example, we recently received funding to support with housing, and this contract supported 2 new staff members to be able to build capacity on our end to be able to meet the demands of communities. But we've had dozens of people line up on a daily basis trying to access services. And so again, we need the capacity and the structure and the dollars to be able to meet the demands. And at this rate, with about 200 folks arriving each day, it is very easy for nonprofit organizations to experience burnout. And so again, I think that sustainable funding is crucial for this work to be able to continue, because we also know that once folks become a little bit more stable, get more access to resources, there will continue to be additional needs that come up as they're, learning a new space, essentially a different culture, a whole different country. And so I think is being able to continue to provide those wraparound services longer term is also crucial. And organizations, a lot of the times, especially as nonprofits, we take on additional work with very little money. And as organizations of color, we're already often underfunded for the services that we provide in our community's native languages. And so I think is taking that into consideration as well.
Yes, in full agreement with that, Ana. So thank you for talking about that. Also to just the role of burnout for staff, the lack of capacity, the capacity that needs to be built, and the sustainable and flexible funding that needs to be in place to really address what we know now is a long-term issue. This is not something that is going to be solved quickly. So this is a kind of final question for everyone on the panel. So maybe we can start with, how about we go Maria Elena this time, and then Ana, and then Yoli, you can close us up. So what do donors giving in this space need to know that hasn't been shared? What are your recommendations back to philanthropy and individual donors for how to be most helpful?
I think Ana has mentioned something very important. That we all need to be aware as a part of the community. This is not something that you do today. This is something that continues. So we truly, truly need your help to make this happen. And something that is also to be important to be mindful of is that the problems arrive within hours, within days. Sometimes we don't have times. Yesterday, we needed to find housing for 50 people in which there were over 12 kids. And we need to provide food, clothing, formula, so many things. So we need to have less restrictions within the structures of the grants in order for us to be able to help those out there. And sometimes we don't have time. Time doesn't play as well with us as we wish to. So it is important for us just to let you guys know that we truly need your help to continue providing the service. And thank you so much for whatever has been done. Thank you.
Ana, let's hear from you next.
Yeah, I think, I echo Maria Elena's words. I think that work continues, the needs continue to be there. And we will continue to see a lot of the similar needs as we have been over the last few months. And so, you know, any contribution, any support is essential, because again, these are things that are happening as we speak. And so with that planning, I think oftentimes with funding, there are lots of limitations, as it's been shared, but also there's a lot of delays that prevent organizations in receiving those dollars right away. And oftentimes we're having to pay things up front and cover those costs as our organizations until the funding comes in. And that can be detrimental to many nonprofits, particularly the smaller nonprofits that are helping these communities. So I think just making sure that dollars are entering organizations right away. Yes, we can all be accountable with our budgets and, you know, metrics of what we are doing, but just ensure that we have access to that so we can do the work in a meaningful way in the moment, not 3 weeks from now when we receive payment.
Yeah, thank you for some really important points, Anna. Yoli, you want to close up this topic?
Yes, to continue with this, first of all, it's exactly what they both were saying, in addition to, for example, the grant that we have from the state, because we served those 215 leases, we ran out of funding. And if it wasn't for the Newcomers grant that I wrote this letter, because we had another 20 families that had to leave. And I want everybody to hear about this. What's happening here, this is a timing. The city gives us a list every week where families and individuals need to leave that have been in the shelter for 30 days. We function with this list. So when we ran out of funds, and you know, the state, I know it's going to give us money, but when you have $500,000 for an organization like us that we have spent, but we haven't gotten reimbursed yet, which we will, we couldn't. I said stop to everybody, and thank you to your new funders. We were able to continue now and continue to house those families and children that were ready to lease, to not be in the street. So it's really important. So I think the continuation, even thinking about making this a program, something that is sustainable year round, because we know now this is not going to stop. And so how can we make the Newcomers Fund a program, a sustainable, a consistent, with what we're learning, so there's always that help that we can give those families and children to arrive.
Thank you, Yoli, for outlining that and for talking again about just how responsive you have to be in your work each day, and where some of the challenges are to support what's happening ongoing. It's again, I think the call that has been made to all of you to step up into this space has been answered. You're doing that each day. Your teams are doing that each day. We have the privilege of being able to support some of that work. We would like to support more. And again, shoulder some of that burden of carrying what it means to really love humanity, what it means to be the welcoming city we want to be. So thank you. On that note, I will kick it back to Sarah, and I believe we'll take some questions and try to answer those.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sonia. And thank you so grateful to Yoli and Mary Elena and Anna for joining us today and for the incredible work that you all are doing. We, as Sonia said, are just humbled to be able to support it. And it's thanks to everybody on the call today and hundreds of other folks who've donated to the Newcomers Fund that we're able to provide those flexible and responsive dollars. Katie, if you could pull up the last slide, that'd be great. We'll take Q&A or questions in the chat if anyone has them in just a moment. But for those of you who are interested in continuing to support this work, we just wanted to remind you of a few ways that you can do that. One, you can contribute again to the Newcomers Fund, and we'll put that link in the chat. You can also contribute directly to the grantees who are engaged in this work. On the Newcomers Fund website, we have links directly to each of those organizations. Our job is just to help foster the philanthropy that supports their work. So we strongly encourage direct giving, and Rose Community Foundation and all the other steering committee members are happy to help facilitate your philanthropy in that way. And then, as Evan said, there's also an opportunity for you to engage as an advocate. We need the federal government to understand what non-border states like Colorado are doing to meet the demands that we're seeing in our community. And immigration policies are set at the federal level, but the impact is happening very much at the local level. And so if folks are interested in supporting in that way, feel free to reach out to us and we can have you join us in letters that we're trying to send to draw attention to both the financial need around this work and also things like work permits for this population who, as Mary Elena said beautifully, are really just trying to make their home in this community, and they want that independence and self-sufficiency. But there are some federal policies that stand in the way of them being able to do that. I'll invite the entire steering committee to join me back on video, and we can take down the slides if there are any final questions, but also especially to Christine Venero and Janet Lopez and Daniel Scriven. If there are any things, and also my colleague Maria at Rose, if there are additional points that you'd like to add, would welcome you all to come off mute and share anything else at this time before we wrap up.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Scriven. I'm the director of Colorado's Office of New Americans. And I think the panel did just an excellent job of telling you stories, telling you the importance of the Newcomers Fund. And I, from a state perspective, just want to echo and reiterate some of what they said. I would love for state funding to be more flexible and to be able to pivot and cover additional costs on a dime. And unfortunately, we're just not set up that way. And so I really appreciate, even as a state government official, I really appreciate the flexibility that the Newcomers Fund provides to our partners in this work. They've done incredible work and would just really thank you for your support and really would ask for your continued support in this effort, in this mission to welcome our newest arrivals to Colorado. Thanks.
Thanks, Dean. We'll go to a question in the chat, but others feel free to jump in. The question is, in addition to funding, I'm wondering the type of capacity building supports that Vive Papagayo Servicios and LCFC need to continue doing this work. Sonia, do you want to start with, since you've talked to more organizations beyond the ones we heard from today about that capacity building question?
Yeah, and I want to be really clear too about LCFC's role in this. We are on the steering committee of the fund, but we're not delivering direct services. So this really is about the direct service that is happening out in the community. And so for these organizations and beyond, some of the things that we're hearing is having the administrative support to be able to manage large grant contracts, including those that are on a reimbursed basis that require fairly complex systems and specialties in terms of skills to manage adequately, to be able to submit, to be able to get reimbursements in a timely way. And so as many organizations do, so many of the staff are focused on program delivery, especially in direct service organizations. So lacking some of that internal capacity, again, to manage really complex reporting and financial management requirements, I think is one of the major challenges. So I'd like to open that up too, to see if there's other folks who have things they'd like to add from a capacity standpoint. I think it's do first and kind of figure things out later, right? When a need is so immediate, but would welcome other thoughts.
Then were you going to say something? Christine, anything to add from the 311 perspective and the role that you all have helped play in deploying federal dollars in our community?
Thank you, Sarah. And I too want to add my sincere and heartfelt thanks to the extraordinary panelists we talk a lot about living united, and you all are doing it on the ground every single day. And Sarah, it's both 311 and 211. And no, it's where it blends together. And again, the leverage of that. And we have seen an increase in phone calls to 211 as you put the phones in the hands of our newcomers to our community. And the challenge becomes what we have all been talking about all morning, making those connects to the resources that exist or and oftentimes do not exist. So again, this united leveraged commitment and the flexibility. Dee, I so appreciated what you said about the flexibility of funds. State and federal funds are amazing, but Yoli knows very well a reimbursement strategy is a tough way when you have families and children standing right in front of you. So I will once again to say that to all the supporters of the Newcomers Fund, thank you for your investment. Please continue investment as we welcome newcomers to our city.
Thanks, Christine.
And
I'll take another question. Oh, go
Sarah,
ahead.
if I could add something really quickly too. You know, I think as much as we talk about the need to build capacity on the nonprofit direct service side, we have to equally talk about how do we remove unnecessary barriers to access that sometimes accompany these funds, that it's both, right? It's how do we build capacity and how do we remove the barriers where we can remove them? That's why the advocacy work is so important, because that needs to be a partnership. It cannot just be about nonprofits building capacity. We have to look at our internal processes and we have to understand what is creating limitations, hardships, unnecessary work, and work against that instinct to try to put those in and start to dismantle some of those systems that we've used for a very long time.
Thanks, Sonia. Another question we received from the chat is, did I hear correctly that the city is out of funds for newcomers and also the state? Are they hoping that new federal funds will come to Denver? Evan, do you want to take that first, and Dee can add? You can talk about the letter you sent this week.
Yeah, we're not out of funds, but we don't have unlimited funds. We actually will be asking City Council for approval today for about $11 million from our contingency account, a contingency fund, which is designed to cover us throughout the entire year for unanticipated, unbudgeted, unexpected emergencies, of which this is. The reimbursement from the feds, we had hoped to receive more than $909,000, given that we've already spent 16, and at the pace we are at now, we'll be spending about $1 million a week to try to serve everybody. And we don't have that much money in contingency. So the alternative is to cut services, to cut our budget, which is something that New York has done and other cities will likely have to do. So we're on the edge of having to make those very difficult decisions.
Thanks, Evan. And then at the state level, to date, we've spent over $8.35 million. As Evan mentioned in his slide deck, we gave $3.5 million to the city of Denver for emergency housing purposes. We've awarded over $2 million to nonprofits, all of whom you see right here, Papagayo Vive, Servicios de la Raza, for integration efforts, getting folks out of emergency housing into more permanent housing, along with navigation. We also requested federal reimbursement twice. If you put both of our asks together, I think the request was about 5 to 6 million. Our latest request was 2.7 million. We got notice of a reimbursement of under $250,000 on Friday. So kind of offensive in terms of the federal reimbursement, honestly. Unlike the city, we don't have a surplus. We don't have any funds sitting around, and we have our Tabor constitutional amendment. So we can't spend what is not budgeted. Those $8.35 million were reprogrammed from other programs, other funds, other sources to go towards this effort. We are still looking for funds, and we also passed, thankfully the state legislature just passed the Urgent Incident Response Fund. I forget the number of the bill. It was a $1 million fund to help in situations like this. But again, it's only $1 million. And so that will not carry us very far. So we are thinking, exploring, trying to identify other sources of funding. which again brings me back to how important this fund is. So I'll take any additional questions if there are any. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. And we're getting close to time. So really grateful to everybody who joined us today. I'm really grateful to this incredible steering committee that has been working since December to try to help in the ways that we're able to. And we couldn't do it without the support of donors like those of you on the call. If you have any questions, if you would like us to help you connect with the incredible grantees who you heard from today or others, please don't hesitate to ask. And thank you everybody for your time today. Have a great afternoon.